I'm straight, but I got my tutor pregnant. James was supposed to be tutoring me. That was the plan. I kept repeating that in my head as I flipped mindlessly through the textbook in front of me, but the words blurred together. Numbers, formulas, concepts I should have been focusing on. All of it drowned beneath the awareness of the person sitting way too close. James had been a senior when I first met him, a guy I barely knew outside of reputation and the occasional nod in passing. Smart, confident, the kind of guy who always had his shit together. When I started struggling with my final exams, one of my friends casually mentioned that James tutored sometimes. I hadn't thought much of it. I figured it'd be simple. He'd help me pass my finals, and then we'd go our separate ways. But nothing about this was simple. James leaned over my shoulder, pointing at an equation I had no chance in hell of understanding in my current state. His voice was smooth and steady, but I wasn't listening. My brain was too caught up in the way he smelled. Sharp, clean, something that made my stomach twist. "Sam?" he said, snapping his fingers in front of me. "You listening?" Not even a little. "Yeah," I lied, shifting in my seat. "You were saying..." He gave me that smirk, the one that made my stomach do stupid things. "You've been staring at the same problem for 5 minutes." His voice dipped lower, almost teasing. "You sure you're focused?" I swallowed, trying to will away the heat creeping back up my neck. "Yeah, just thinking." James leaned in, his hand pressing against the desk right beside me. "Thinking about what?" And just like that, the air changed. I turned my head slightly, and suddenly we were too close. His green eyes locked onto mine, unblinking, like he already knew exactly what was running through my mind. My heart pounded in my ears. "Sam?" he murmured, barely above a whisper. His lips were right there, inches away. This was stupid. I was reckless. I kissed him anyway. The moment our mouths met, a sharp inhale escaped him. He didn't pull away. He pushed in, hard. One hand slid up my neck, fingers threading into my hair as he pulled me closer, deeper, until I felt the heat of his body pressed against mine. This was not studying. His tongue swept over mine, slow and teasing, like he had all the time in the world. My hands moved without thinking, gripping his waist, feeling the way his muscles tensed under my touch. When he exhaled a shaky breath against my lips, it sent a shock straight down my spine. I didn't even remember standing up, but suddenly I had him backed against the desk, our books shoved to the side like they didn't matter. His hands were on my hips now, fingers digging in, pulling me in like he needed me as much as I needed him. "You should be paying attention," he muttered against my mouth, but his voice was wrecked, his breath uneven. "I am," I shot back, pressing closer, nipping at his jaw just to hear the sound he made in response. His head tipped back slightly, his grip tightening. "Yeah?" he rasped, and I swore I felt his pulse hammering against my lips. "Then tell me, what's the answer?" "To what?" My hand slipped under his shirt, dragging my nails lightly over his skin. He let out a soft, breathy curse, his fingers digging harder into my hips. "Exactly," he muttered, before pulling me back into another kiss, this time deeper, messier, like we had completely lost control, and honestly, I wasn't sure we wanted it back. A month later. I hadn't seen James in over a month, not since that night, not since we agreed it was a one-time thing, a stress-fueled mistake that we wouldn't talk about again. So when I opened my door and saw him standing there, looking way too serious, my brain short-circuited. I blinked. "James?" "Hey," he said, shifting on his feet. His hands were shoved into the pockets of his hoodie, and for once he didn't have that usual cocky smirk. He actually looked nervous. That was my first red flag. The second? The way he inhaled like he was bracing himself before saying, "We need to talk." Something in his voice sent my stomach into freefall. "Okay." I pushed the door open a little wider. "You want to come in, or..." "I'm pregnant." The words hit me like a truck. I stared at him. "What?" "I'm pregnant," he repeated, slower this time. I let out a sharp, confused laugh. "That's... what? That's not possible. You're a guy." James held my gaze, his expression unreadable. I'm trans. The world tilted. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. My brain scrambled for something, anything, to say, but all I managed was, since when? His brow lifted. Since always, Sam. I ran a hand through my hair. Pacing back a step like that would help me process what the hell was happening. My heart was hammering. You never told me. Didn't think it mattered, he said with a small shrug. Not for one night, anyway. I exhaled hard, shaking my head. Okay, hold on, I gestured wildly, trying to string together a single rational thought. How? I mean, I know how, but how? James sighed. I stopped taking testosterone a while ago. Long story. Didn't think I could even get pregnant, but here we are. Here we are, I repeated, voice hollow. Silence stretched between us. James shifted again, glancing away. Look, I'm not here to make this complicated for you. I just thought you should know. That's it? My voice came out sharper than I intended. You just drop this on me like a bomb and expect me to, what, go back to my day like nothing happened? His jaw tightened. What do you want me to say, Sam? I stared at him, 100 emotions crashing together. Shock, confusion, something dangerously close to panic. I have a future to think about. A career. I can't have a baby right now. I'm not asking you to. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. I don't need anything from you. I'm keeping it. That's my decision, but you deserve to know. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. So what? You just tell me and leave? If that's what you want, he said simply. I didn't know what I wanted. My brain was too full, too loud, spinning in circles around one impossible fact. James is pregnant with my baby. I rubbed my temples, exhaling hard. Fuck. Yeah, James said, a ghost of a smile flickering across his lips. That about sums it up. 2 days later. I told myself I wasn't thinking about it. That's what I said every time my brain dragged me back to that night. James beneath me, hands gripping my shoulders, his lips parted in that way that made my stomach clench. The way he had looked at me, like I was something he wanted, like I was something he... I groaned and shoved my face into my pillow. Stop. It was a mistake, a one-time thing. That's what we agreed. Then why the hell couldn't I shake it? I barely even talked to James before that night. Just enough to schedule a tutoring sessions. Just enough to exchange sarcasm when I got frustrated with the numbers he was throwing at me. He was sharp, confident, always looked like he had his shit figured out. I liked that about him. Now? Now he was having my baby. I had no idea what to do with that. My life was supposed to be planned. College, career, a steady, predictable path. No part of that plan involved a kid, or the fact that I couldn't stop thinking about the person carrying them. I ran a hand down my face, groaning. Maybe it was just the shock messing with my head. The sheer impossibility of it. Yeah, that had to be it. Because the alternative? The idea that maybe that night meant something? Something I wasn't ready to deal with. The next day. I almost didn't go. I had stared at James's text for 10 whole minutes before finally sucking it up and heading to the cafe he picked. We hadn't talked since he told me. Not properly. Just a few awkward texts where I asked if he was, okay. And he answered with his usual bluntness, yeah, why wouldn't I be? But now, sitting across from him, watching him sip on some ridiculous decaf drink, I realized something. He was okay. He wasn't freaking out. He wasn't panicking or spiraling. He looked normal. Maybe a little tired, but fine. Meanwhile, I was a wreck. So, James said, sitting his cup down, I've been thinking. Yeah? My voice sounded tighter than I meant it to. He nodded, meeting my eyes. About co-parenting. It took me a second to process the words, then another second for my brain to reject them. Co-parenting, I repeated. Yeah, He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed like he was talking about the weather. I don't expect anything from you, Sam. I meant that, but if you want to be involved, I think we should figure out what that looks like now. My carefully structured life cracked straight down the middle. I exhaled sharply, gripping the edge of the table. James, I can't do this. His face didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Why not? Because I have plans, a future. My whole life is ahead of me, and I don't even know if I want kids, let alone... I gestured vaguely at him, at us, at whatever the hell this situation was. James tilted his head. You don't have to decide your whole life right now. Just whether you want to be here for this. This, I echoed. Our kid? He clarified. I flinched at the words. James sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. Look, Sam, I didn't come here to trap you, all right? You can walk away. No hard feelings. I should have felt relief at that. I didn't. I swallowed, shifting in my seat. And what if I don't walk away? A small smile tugged at his lips. Then we figure it out. Simple. Easy. Like this wasn't the biggest, most terrifying decision of my life. I should have said no. Should have walked out and pretended this wasn't happening. Instead, I looked at him. Really looked at him. For the first time. I wondered if maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of my life. Maybe it was just the start of something else. A few weeks later. I wasn't supposed to be here. I told myself that over and over as I sat in the cramped waiting room, bouncing my knee while the clock on the wall ticked way too loud. James sat beside me, cool as ever, flipping through his phone like this was just any other day. Meanwhile, my entire body was a live wire. I had no idea what I was doing. I wasn't a boyfriend. I wasn't a husband. I wasn't even sure if I was ready to be a dad. But when James had mentioned the appointment in passing, something in my chest had clenched, and before I knew it, the words were out. Do you want to come? James had blinked at me, then shrugged. If you want. Now, sitting here, I wasn't sure if I wanted anything. Before I could overthink myself into a coma, a nurse called James's name. He stood, stretching a little, before glancing at me. Well? He said, raising an eyebrow. I hesitated. Then, without fully understanding why, I got up and followed him. The room was small, too white, too sterile. James climbed onto the exam table like it was nothing. I hovered awkwardly by the chair, trying not to feel too out of place. Then the doctor came in, all polite smiles, and started the ultrasound. And suddenly, everything changed. The screen flickered and a small, fuzzy shape appeared. Then a sound filled the room. Quick, rhythmic, steady. I stiffened. What is that? James's lip twitched. Heartbeat. I didn't breathe. Couldn't. That fast, fluttering sound, that was our baby. The doctor was saying something. Measurements, healthy development, whatever. But I barely heard it. My eyes were locked on the screen. On them. On this tiny, impossible life. James must have noticed because when I finally dragged my gaze to him, his expression was softer than I'd ever seen it. You okay? He murmured. I swallowed. Yeah, I exhaled, shaking my head. That's real. James' smile was small. Yeah, it is. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt something I couldn't name. A few weeks later. My phone buzzed violently against my nightstand. I groaned, cracking one eye open to squint at the screen. James. I'm dying. I frowned, barely registering the time. 2:37 a.m. Me. What? James. Morning sickness is a scam. It happens at night too. This is hell. I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face. I had two choices: roll over and ignore him, or be a decent human being. Against my better judgment, I grabbed my keys. 20 minutes later, I knocked on his door. James opened it, looking like absolute shit. Hair a mess, hoodie slipping off his shoulder, dark circles under his eyes. He groaned dramatically and slumped against the doorway. "This is the end," he mumbled. I rolled my eyes, pushing past him. "Jesus, you look like you got hit by a bus." "I wish," he muttered, trudging after me. "At least then I wouldn't feel so nauseous." I glanced around the disaster zone that was his kitchen. Cracker crumbs on the counter, half a ginger ale can abandoned by the sink. The dude had clearly been struggling. Sighing, I rummaged through his cabinets. "You got, tea or something?" James flopped onto the couch, groaning. "Bottom shelf. Chamomile, I think." I found the tea, made a cup, and shoved it into his hands. "Drink, and don't puke on me." He took a small sip, eyes fluttering shut. "You're weirdly good at this." I scoffed. Yeah. Just don't expect me to tuck you in or some shit." James smirked. "Noted." He took another sip, and for the first time in days, his face wasn't twisted in misery. And for some reason, that made me feel weirdly okay. A month later. "This is the worst day of my life," James muttered, leaning dramatically on the shopping cart. I snorted. "You said that was yesterday." "Yeah, well, today is worse." I rolled my eyes, tossing a loaf of bread into the cart. The grocery store was packed, and James was clearly not having it. His hoodie was too big, his mood was too foul, and he kept making that weird nauseous face every time we passed something that remotely smelled strong. "Ugh," he groaned, stopping in his tracks. "Why does the entire deli section smell like feet?" I smirked. "Maybe because it's cheese?" James visibly gagged, clutching his stomach. "I hate this." I sighed, yanking the cart forward. "Okay, drama queen, let's speed this up before you start dry heaving in the aisles." James groaned, but followed. 15 minutes later, we were in checkout when I noticed he'd completely zoned out, staring into space with a pale face. I frowned. "James?" Nothing. "James?" Still nothing. I poked his arm. "Dude, are you about to pass out?" He blinked rapidly, like he was forcing himself to stay upright. He swallowed hard. "I think I need to sit down." Jesus Christ, I shoved my stuff into the conveyor belt, paid way too fast, then grabbed his sleeve and practically dragged him to a bench near the exit. "Breathe," I muttered, handing him a bottle of water from my bag. "You good?" James took slow sips, eyes fluttering shut. "I'm fine, just dizzy. It happens." I stared at him for a second longer than I should have. "You eat today?" James hesitated. I groaned, rubbing my temples. "You didn't, did you?" "Lost my appetite," he muttered, rubbing his stomach. "Food smells awful lately." I sighed, then dug into one of the grocery bags, pulling out a protein bar. "Eat this." He squinted at it. "That looks disgusting." I narrowed my eyes. "Eat the damn bar." James muttered something under his breath, but took a bite. After a few minutes, he let out a slow breath. "Okay, that actually helped." I shook my head. "You're the worst at taking care of yourself." James smirked. "Lucky for me, I've got you." I blinked. Before I could respond, he leaned back against the bench, smirking lazily. "Bet you never thought you'd be grocery shopping for your baby mama, huh?" I shoved his shoulder. "Shut up." But for some reason, I couldn't shake the weird feeling settling in my chest. About 2 months later. "You're staring." I blinked, snapping out of it. "What?" James smirked, stretching out on the couch, one hand resting lazily on his stomach. You keep staring. I rolled my eyes. Not my fault you look weird. Wow, rude, he snorted. I look great. I huffed but didn't argue, because, honestly, he did. He was glowing. Not in some cheesy, dramatic way, but in that way that made my chest feel weirdly tight. The baby bump was noticeable now, rounding out under his hoodie. It made this whole thing more real, like there was no more pretending. James stretched again, groaning lightly. They've been moving all day, he muttered, rubbing his stomach, kicking like crazy. I blinked. Wait, they're kicking? Yeah, he tilted his head. You want to feel? Something in my chest did a weird flip. Come on, Sam. It's your kid, too. That shouldn't have hit the way it did. Swallowing, I hesitated before shifting closer. James grabbed my hand without waiting, pressing it flat against his stomach. His skin was warm through the fabric. For a second, nothing happened, then a small, firm nudge against my palm. I jerked back like I had been electrocuted. Holy shit. James laughed, eyes glinting. Told you. I hesitated before pressing my hand back, waiting, holding my breath. Another kick, and another. Something deep inside me cracked wide open. I wasn't ready. I wasn't. But in that moment, I wanted this kid to know me. 3 weeks later. I stretched my legs out on James's couch, watching as he flipped lazily through a baby name book. You seriously got a book for this? I asked, eyeing the thick pages. James raised an eyebrow. You got a better way? I don't know, like Google? He scoffed. Excuse me for wanting to be thorough. I rolled my eyes, but didn't argue. Instead, I picked up a notebook where names were scribbled in different handwriting, some scratched out, some circled. I stared at it for a second longer than I should have. All right, let's test out a few, James said, flipping to a page. How do you feel about Oliver? I wrinkled my nose. Feels like a kid that would own a yacht. He tapped the book again, lips pursed. What about Elias? Eli for short. I opened my mouth to shoot off another joke, but I didn't hate it. Eli. It was simple, strong. I imagined calling it out across a playground, writing it on a birthday card, hearing a tiny voice say, "That's my name." Something warm curled in my chest. Yeah, I muttered, rubbing my jaw. I kinda like it. A pause, then a small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Eli, he said, testing it. It suits them, doesn't it? I swallowed, nodding. Yeah. James kept smiling, flipping the page, but I wasn't looking at the book anymore. I was looking at him. And something about the way he said them, like this baby was already a person, already ours. It did something to me that I wasn't ready to face. A few weeks later. This is a terrible idea, I muttered, eyeing the pile of baby clothes stacked on James's couch. James snorted, holding up a tiny onesie. Relax, future dad. We got this. I nearly choked on my own breath. The hell did you just call me? James blinked. What? You just called me Dad. He tilted his head, then shrugged like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Yeah? You are, aren't you? He didn't say it dramatically. Didn't say it like he was expecting a reaction. It was just a fact. I cleared my throat. I mean, yeah, but... I shook my head. Never mind, just tell me which of these actually makes sense. James smirked but didn't argue. We spent the next hour sifting through the clothes his friends and family had sent. James laughed every time I looked horrified at how small everything was. At one point, he held up a onesie that said, "I heart my dad," and wiggled his eyebrows. I snorted. You're actually enjoying this, huh? James stretched, his smile turning softer. Didn't expect you to care so much about the details. I paused. Because the thing was, I hadn't realized I cared this much either. I glanced at the tiny clothes, at James, at everything that was changing. This was real. It was happening. And I was here, choosing to be here. I wasn't sure when that stopped feeling like a duty and started feeling like something I wanted. But it had. And that scared the absolute shit out of me. 2 weeks later. It was late. Too late. But I wasn't sleeping. Instead, I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I was coming apart at the seams. I had spent the last few months convincing myself this was just responsibility, just the right thing to do. But it wasn't just that. It was the way I caught myself looking forward to doctor's appointments, the way I liked picking out baby clothes with James, even though I pretended to complain. It was the way my heart clenched when he called me Dad, like the word was something I wanted instead of something I was stuck with. It was James. It was the way he leaned against me when he was tired, the way he laughed, the way he made space for me in a life that should have never included me in the first place. It was everything. And that terrified me. Because what if this wasn't real? What if I woke up one day and realized I didn't want this after all? What if I let them both down? I turned, staring at my phone, my fingers hovering over James's contact. I could call him. I could tell him all of this. But I didn't. I was in too deep, and I had no idea how to get out. 2 days later. I wasn't expecting my phone to ring at 2 a.m. Bleary-eyed, I grabbed it off my nightstand, already prepared to cuss someone out, until I saw James's name on the screen. My stomach twisted. I hesitated, then answered. Yeah? For a moment, all I heard was soft breathing, then, I can't sleep. I frowned, sitting up. Everything okay? Yeah, just, the baby's kicking a lot tonight. It feels weird. Comforting people wasn't exactly my thing, but the thought of James lying awake, dealing with this alone, made something tighten in my chest. Before I could think better of it, I muttered, Want me to come over? Silence. Then, quietly, Yeah. 15 minutes later, I was at his place. James was curled up on the couch, looking exhausted but relieved when he saw me. I didn't know what I was doing. I just sat down beside him, let him lean against my shoulder. We didn't talk much. Eventually his breathing evened out, and I realized he'd fallen asleep against me. I should have moved, should have left, but I didn't. Instead, I stayed, listening to the quiet, feeling something shift inside me that I wasn't ready to name. A week later. Damn it, Sam, hold still. James was standing in front of me, frowning as he tried to fix my tie. I was supposed to be going to some internship dinner tonight, but the stupid tie wasn't cooperating, and James had finally started fixing it himself. Which would have been fine, except now he was standing way too close. I swallowed hard, watching the way his fingers moved. His lips pressed together in focus. I don't get why you're so bad at this, he muttered. Did no one teach you basic life skills? My bad. Guess I should have planned ahead for surprise pregnancy and emergency tie fixing sessions. James snorted. You're ridiculous. But he was smiling, and suddenly, all I could think about was how close we were, how easy it would be to lean in, close the distance, see what would happen. His hand stilled on my tie, and when he looked up at me, his expression shifted, soft, unreadable, like maybe he was thinking the same thing. My heartbeat slammed against my ribs. For a second, we didn't move, didn't breathe. Then James blinked, stepping back like nothing had happened. There, he said, his voice a little too even. Fixed. I nodded, throat tight. Thanks. But as I walked away, I could still feel the ghost of his touch. A few days later. It had been snowing all day, the city blanketed in white. We were walking back from a doctor's appointment, James bundled in a too big coat, his breath visible in the cold air. "Sam," he said, suddenly stopping mid-step. I turned, shoving my hands into my pockets. "What?" He hesitated, then, "Why are you still here?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I frowned. "What the hell does that mean?" James sighed, shaking his head. "You don't have to do this, you know. Be here, be involved." I stared at him, something hot and frustrated bubbling up in my chest. "You think I don't know that?" James didn't say anything. I ran a hand through my hair, exhaling hard. "Look, I don't know what this is. I don't know what I'm doing, but I do know that when I think about walking away, I can't. I don't want to." James's lips parted slightly, eyes searching mine. "And it's not just about the baby," I admitted, voice quieter. "It's you." The snow kept falling, the world around us quiet and still. Then James smiled, small, almost disbelieving, but real. "Okay," he said softly. And for the first time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, this was exactly where I was meant to be. 2 weeks later. It started over something stupid. A crib. We were standing in the middle of the damn baby store, surrounded by rows of pastel-colored furniture, when James pointed at one. "I like this one," he said, tapping the frame. It was sleek, modern, expensive looking. "What do you think?" I barely looked at it. "Yeah, sure, whatever works." James frowned. "Dude, do you even care?" I exhaled sharply. "Of course I care, I'm just..." I ran a hand through my hair. "You clearly have this handled. You don't need my opinion." His expression shifted, eyes narrowing. "Seriously? Sam, this isn't just my baby. It's yours, too." I looked away, jaw clenching. "I know that." "Do you?" His voice sharpened. "Because lately, it feels like you're just hovering around this whole thing. Showing up, doing the bare minimum, but never actually letting yourself be in it." That hit something raw. My stomach twisted, my pulse spiking. "That's not fair." James scoffed. "Isn't it? You keep pretending this is just something you have to do. Like an obligation. And I get it, okay? This wasn't your plan, but this is happening. And I need to know you're in it, Sam. Not just for the baby, for me too." I swallowed hard. My chest felt too tight, my head buzzing with too many things I didn't want to deal with. "I am doing what's best for the baby," I muttered. James let out a bitter laugh. "Bullshit. You're doing what's easiest for you." My head snapped up. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he said, voice quieter now but sharper. "You're scared. So you're keeping everything at arm's length. Me, the baby, your own feelings, because it's easier than admitting you don't have all the answers." My whole body went rigid. "My feelings." I barked out a laugh. "Jesus, James, you really think this is about us? You think I have time to sit around figuring out whatever this is when there's a literal child about to be born?" "So that's it." His voice was tight. "You're just going to keep pretending there's nothing between us." I hesitated. My chest ached, everything in me screaming to say something. But fear was louder. So I did what I always do. I shut down. "James, I don't know what you want from me." He inhaled sharply, shaking his head. "I want you to see what's right in front of you, Sam. I want you to stop running." Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. James looked away first, exhaling shakily. Then he turned on his heel and walked out. I didn't stop him, and I hated myself for it. 1 month later. It had been weeks since the fight. Weeks of James keeping his distance, weeks of silence, of unanswered texts, of a cold, empty space where he used to be. And I hated it. I hadn't realized how much space he took up in my life until he was gone. I told myself this was for the best, that I had done the right thing, pushing him away before I could screw things up worse. But if that was true, why did I feel so miserable? I wanted him, not just as the father of my kid, not just because of obligation or responsibility. I wanted him. Sure, I was scared as hell about the whole dad thing, about whether I was enough, but the idea of losing James, of losing them both, was far, far worse. I needed to fix this. My phone rang. I barely registered answering it before a rushed voice filled the line. Sam? It was James's friend, sounding breathless. It's happening, she said. James is in labor. The world tilted. For a second, I couldn't move, couldn't think. Then, I'm coming. Everything after that was a blur. The drive, the hospital, the white-knuckled rush through the halls, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break through my ribs. And then suddenly, I was there. A nurse was calling my name, telling me, it's time. The delivery room was too bright, too loud, machines beeping, doctors murmuring instructions, and James was lying there, eyes squeezed shut, breath ragged, sweat dampening his hair. I had never seen him like this, raw, vulnerable, but strong. And then, a small, sharp, perfect cry. My heart stopped. The doctor held up a tiny, squirming baby, pink and wrinkly and mine. James let out a shaky laugh, eyes glassy as he reached for them. Hey, baby, he whispered, voice wrecked. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. A nurse nudged me forward. Your dad? Do you want to hold him? Dad. The word hit me like a sledgehammer. I barely registered nodding before my arms were full of warmth and weight, so small, so fragile. My throat tightened as I stared down at the tiny person blinking up at me, their fingers curling weakly around mine. Something inside me cracked open. I had spent months resisting this, pushing it down, keeping my distance, convincing myself that this wasn't part of my plan. But none of that mattered anymore, because this was real. This little person, this life, my baby, was here, and no amount of fear could change that. I looked up, heart hammering. James was watching me. He looked exhausted, hair a mess, eyes heavy with something I couldn't name, but the way he was looking at me, soft, full of something raw and real, made my chest squeeze. And suddenly, I got it. Love wasn't about a plan. It wasn't about checking the right boxes, following the rules, or fitting into the mold I thought I was supposed to. Love was this messy, terrifying, perfect thing. I swallowed hard, still holding the baby close, and met James's gaze. We did good, I whispered. James smiled, small, tired, real. Yeah, he murmured. We did. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of what came next. 2 days later. The apartment was quiet, except for the faint sound of the baby breathing in the bassinet. James sat on the couch, curled up with a blanket, looking drained but content. I stood awkwardly near the kitchen, heart pounding. I needed to say something, but where the hell did I even start? James must have sensed something too, because he looked up, raising an eyebrow. You good? I let out a sharp breath. No. His expression shifted, lips pressing together. Sam, I don't know what I'm doing, I blurted out. With the baby, with you, with all of this. James sat up straighter, watching me closely. I swallowed. I spent so much time thinking this wasn't supposed to happen, that this wasn't planned. But now, I exhaled, now I can't imagine life without them, and without you. James's breath hitched, his eyes softened, but he just let me talk. I don't know what that means. I don't even know what I am to you or what I want to be, I admitted, my voice rough. All I know is that every time I try to picture my life without you in it, it feels... I let out a short laugh, shaking my head. It feels wrong. James stared at me, something flickering in his expression. Hope, maybe. Then, after a long pause, he whispered, I was waiting for you to figure that out. My chest tightened. James. He smiled, small and knowing. You don't have to have all the answers, Sam. You never did. I swallowed hard, and for the first time, maybe that didn't feel like such a terrifying thing. Later that night, I was sitting on the couch with the baby in my arms. The room was quiet, filled only with the soft sound of breathing. James's, the baby's, mine. James was beside me, his head resting against my shoulder, warm and solid and here. His presence settled something deep inside me. We sat in comfortable silence, watching our kid's tiny chest rise and fall, their little fingers twitching in sleep. Every few seconds, James's fingers brushed against mine, feathered light, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to touch me, but couldn't quite stop himself. I swallowed hard, staring at our baby, feeling the weight of everything I had fought against for so long, and then, before I could think better of it, I spoke. I was scared, I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Of this, of us. James hummed, shifting slightly, but he didn't pull away. I know. I still kind of am. His hand found mine, warm and steady, fingers curling around mine with quiet certainty. That's okay, he murmured. Fear doesn't mean you don't want it. I turned to look at him, heart thudding, but I think I do want this. James met my gaze, his eyes full of something so damn patient and steady that it made my throat tight. He'd been waiting for me, for this moment, for me to stop running and finally see what was in front of me. Then stay, he said simply. His voice was soft, but there was something unshakable in it, something sure. Just the quiet, unwavering belief that I belonged here. I looked down at the baby, at James, at everything in front of me, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like running. I squeezed his hand back. Okay. James' breath hitched slightly, and then he was leaning in. It was slow, hesitant, like he was giving me the chance to pull away, but I didn't. I tilted my head, meeting him halfway. The kiss was soft, warm, filled with something neither of us needed to put into words. When we pulled away, James exhaled shakily, a small, almost disbelieving smile tugging at his lips. Took you long enough, he murmured. I huffed a quiet laugh, resting my forehead against his. Yeah, I whispered, but I'm here now. James let out a small, content sigh, his fingers threading through mine. Yeah, he murmured. You are? 2 years later. The apartment was a mess. Toys scattered across the floor, a half-finished sippy cup abandoned on the coffee table, and crayon marks mysteriously appearing on the walls, despite both of us swearing we had put them out of reach. And right in the middle of it all, our kid, Ellie, standing on chubby little legs, clutching a stuffed dinosaur in one hand, and grinning up at me with James's green eyes. Dada! She squealed before barreling straight into my legs. I caught her just in time, lifting her effortlessly onto my hip. You're a menace, you know that? I muttered, pressing a kiss to the top of her messy curls. She giggled, just like the little gremlin she was, and squished my face between her tiny hands. "Dada funny." James' laugh floated in from the kitchen. "She's not wrong." I turned to see him leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, a knowing smirk on his lips. His hair was a little longer now, messy from the day, and he was wearing one of my old hoodies because apparently that was just his now. "You encouraging her to bully me?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. James grinned. "She learns from the best." I rolled my eyes, but couldn't stop the warmth from spreading through my chest. James walked over, reaching out to tickle Ellie's tummy, earning a delightful squeal. Then he pressed a kiss to my cheek, lingering just long enough to make my heart do that stupid, fluttery thing it still did every time he touched me. "I made dinner," he said softly. My lips quirked. "That's code for, I almost set the kitchen on fire again, isn't it?" James gasped dramatically. "Excuse you? I'll have you know the smoke alarm only went off once." I snorted, shaking my head. "Fine, but if we die of food poisoning, I'm haunting you." He grinned, pulling me in for another kiss, this one slower, softer, more familiar in the best way. Our kid smushed her hands between us, giggling, "Ew, Dada gross." James laughed against my lips. "Get used to it, kiddo." I sighed, shaking my head fondly as I carried our little chaos gremlin toward the kitchen, James walking beside me. This wasn't the life I planned, but damn, it was the best thing that had ever happened to me. Conclusion. It started as a mistake. One reckless, impulsive night that should have never happened. I spent months convincing myself of that, trying to push it away, pretending it didn't mean anything. But looking at where we are now, James curled up beside me, our kids sleeping soundly between us, I know the truth. It was never a mistake. It was the beginning of something I never saw coming, something terrifying and messy and real. We built a life together, not because we had to, but because we chose to. And now I don't waste time worrying about what's next. Because whatever the future holds, whether it's more sleepless nights, more chaos, more love, I know we'll face it together. The end. What would you have named the baby? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our rainbow force and stay wholesome.